By cultural policy, we can mean two-dimensional field of policy. First of all, cultural policy can be understood as a way of dealing with the culture as a public good. And that means that there has to be an organized public administration for making cultural things in the society happen. So it can mean a Ministry of Culture and its kind of regional departments, for instance, and different kinds of systems of arts councils in societies and their way of supporting arts, supporting cultural heritage activities, and supporting other cultural activities like the activities of minorities, for instance. And then there can be another way of approaching cultural policy also. And this means that we understand politics and policy as more or like a wider concept than in the previous approach. And this means that we understand policy and politics as a part of competing and struggling and negotiating about different meanings given to culture in a society by different actors. And then cultural policy doesn't only mean that it's practiced by public administration or politicians or whoever related to the official cultural administration system, but it means that also civil society actors like associations, social movements, individual people even can take part in cultural politics and cultural policy. So there are different ways of approaching cultural policy or different dimensions that through which you can analyze and approach cultural policy. First of all, you can separate or you can analyze it through this kind of geographical or geopolitical framework. And that means that you can concentrate on international cultural policy and international organizations, for instance. You can study UNESCO and its activities, its discourses, its kind of legislation on culture and how it affects the national levels or the regional levels and even the local levels. And then you can approach cultural policy on a national level, of course. You can see that how the public administration in certain country, for instance in Mexico or I come from Finland, how cultural policy in Finland works. And what is the national framework, what is the national principle of cultural policy. And then there are regional and local levels. And you can see how the national policy is influenced on the regional level and how the culture is actually practiced in the regional level. What kind of cultural activities they support, what kind of cultural activities they organize in there, what kind of cultural institutions like regional museums there are and stuff like that. And that can be done also in the local level. And another way of approaching the different dimensions of cultural policy is to think, first of all, culture as arts. So when you understand culture as arts, you approach artistic activities and arts policies, how for instance, the labor markets of artists is supported by the government or by public administration. Or then you can understand culture as cultural heritage activities, activities related to the institutions which try to keep or maintain people's identities, for instance, or their religious beliefs or some other things related to cultural heritage. That's also one way of approaching it. And then there is this more wide understanding of culture, which relates cultural policy to ways of life of people. So then you approach cultural policy as a way of organizing and conducting, regulating a way of life of certain people in a certain society. For instance, we can see how minorities are kind of governed through using certain means and principles of cultural policy. So that's also one way of approaching it. So when you start your cultural policy studies and you start to go to education on cultural policy, it's good that you have thought a topic that really interests you, and the topic can be accordingly your own life experience, your work experience, your own interests in culture. For instance, if you're interested in music and organizing music festivals, you can start to analyze and study how this organization of music festivals and how the public administration and public support for the music festivals and how the audiences react and stuff like that. So all those things that are related to music festivals. And then it's really important also to think about whether you're interested in that topic either theoretically or empirically, or it can be also both. So if your interest is, for instance, theoretical, then you have to be very careful when deciding what kind of theory you will use in analyzing the issue and what kind of answers you will probably get out of using certain theory. For instance, if you want to analyze the different positions and different kind of struggles and negotiations in the fields of culture, you most probably want to use, for instance, the theories of Pierre Bourdieu and his understanding of culture as a field of different kind of negotiation, different kind of struggles over the positions in culture and who gets a chance to say what culture means in this certain field, and who gets to define the identities and positions of other people. So you have to be careful to choose the theoretical approach accordingly to the topic that you're interested in. So they're related. And of course, this goes with the methodological choices as well. If you're interested in studying what are the meanings given to culture, or what are the meanings given to cultural or ethnic minorities, for instance, you will be probably using discourse analysis or some other way of doing semiotic analysis, or analysis which concerns the meanings and the ways how the meanings are given to things and identities and such issues. And the third thing is to think about the empirical cases. So if you're interested in music, then you have to also decide what will be the most suitable, most relevant cases for your topic. So if you're interested in, for instance, in the musical festivals or the music festivals, then of course it's very relevant to pick up case studies, different kinds of festivals, and compare them, or then select similar kinds of festivals and compare them to each other and see how the things are, how the practices go in different festivals, what are the similarities, what are the differences, and so on and so on. And then you probably need to do empirical study, like ethnographic field work in those festivals, and interview people, or make a surveys, like collect big data from different festival organizers, or even the festival audiences, if you want to do audience research. So there are multiple options in doing cultural policy studies on the topics that you are interested in this field of research.